That doomsday clock they talk about was not designed in heaven. The time was set at 7 minutes to midnight and 47. Many near catastrophes have come along the way. Now climate change is ticking several seconds off each day.
Yeah, we're talking about media, and the point that I always try to make in any interview, and that is the reality. It's a sad reality. It's kind of hard. I've been in this town for 53 years now, so I've seen a lot of change. You see a lot of change in half a century, but there's one change that dwarfs all the other changes, and that is that we no longer have, in any real sense, a free media. That's big. Now, the Fourth Estate, I used to say the Fourth Estate was moribund. It's dead now, okay? Pretty much dead. And that's bad news, but the good news is there's a Fifth Estate, okay? You can find out what's going on. And young people, they don't read the New York Times or the Washington Post anymore. Some of them know where to go to find out real information on the web. Others watch video. So I was about to tell you this little vignette, which taught me a lot. Ann Wright and myself, a bunch of other people who were giving an award, Sam Adams Award for Integrity and Intelligence. This one was to Assistant Secretary of State Tom Finger. He happened to be teaching in Oxford at the time, so we went to Oxford to give him the award. Well, we had dinner with Julian Assange beforehand. And we were waiting, having a little wine in the little anteroom in the Ecuadorian embassy, right? And the door opens and Julian comes in. I'm next to the door. So I said, Julian, Ray McGovern. He looks at me and says, well, I know. So I said, oh, you read my stuff? No, I don't read your stuff. I see you on YouTube. Now, Julian isn't the youngest, of this generation, but even Julian, 40, 41, whatever he was then, he sees me on YouTube. And most of the people that know about me see me on YouTube. Now, I spend hours crafting this great prose, which I publish on raymcgovern.com, a site that my youngest son created for me and peoples and keeps up to date for me. But it's the video that people, especially young people, relate to. So what you're doing, Regis, I think is really right on the mark. To the degree you get up on YouTube, to the degree people become aware of what you're doing, I mean, this is the way you reach people. And old people like me are going to be dying off, right? I still read the New York Times and the Washington Post like this way, because I want to know what the others are missing, what my colleagues in New York who think by reading the New York Times page after page every day, they know what's going on. My parents in the Bronx used to read the New York Times, as my Irish grandfather used to say, black and white. The whole thing, right? Every day. Now, if they got a little tired at the end of the day and couldn't finish it, they had a special place to put the New York Times for that day, and they wouldn't dare look at the one for the next morning until they had finished it, okay? Now, in those days, on Vietnam, on other things, you could depend on the New York Times for giving you pretty much good repertorial stuff. Some of their editorials were not so good, but you could find out what's going on, no more. And I could tell you a story about being at my 50th, it was my 50th college reunion at Fordham University in the Bronx. I had heard that General Jack Keane, 4-star, former Army Chief of Staff, or Deputy Chief of Staff, I guess, Fordham ROTC, like me, that he was going to give a speech at our reunion because he was out 45 years. So he's a 5-year guy. We're 50, he's 45. So I made the supreme sacrifice. I didn't have a beer during the picnic because I knew that I probably wanted to ask him a question, and I wanted to be completely compass mentis. So he gets up there, and he says, well, now, I'm going, he's all dolled up, you know, he's got this, I don't know, these shirts they have today, they have like a different collar, and then they have all these different colors, and he's up there, and he says, I'm going to JFK, I'm going to Europe, and I'm going to tell those Europeans, they're waffling on Iran, I'm going to tell them how close Iran is to getting a nuclear weapon, so they get their act together, and we can stop Iran, you know. Now, this is 2011, right? So I'm 50 years out, he's 45 years out. Now, I listened to this for a while, I raised my hand, always the skunk at the picnic, you know, and finally he recognized me. Now, General Keane, Ray McGovern, I used to work for the Central Intelligence Agency, and I'm really intrigued at your claiming that Iran is close to a nuclear weapon. Could you be unaware that the entire U.S. intelligence community, all 16 agencies, decided unanimously, with high confidence, as they put it, that Iran stopped working on a nuclear weapon at the end of 2003 and has not resumed that work? Could you be unaware of that? He looks at me, he says, I have my own sources. I lost it. I said, that's a lie. Now, the dean's going like this. He's a trustee now. He's, you know, he's a Fox guy, you know, Fox News and all that stuff. So, what's the point of my saying all this? My colleagues, my friends, who I went to college with, some I went to high school with, who used to think I was a reasonably bright guy. You know, I graduated summa cum laude, and they named me the most representative Fordham man. They were completely disoriented. What happened to McGovern? My God, he's gone off the deep end. There's a 4-star general there. He's a trustee. How can we call him a liar? My God. And besides that, we haven't read that in the New York Times. We read the New York Times all the time, and it's not there, you know. Now, it was sad, you know, because they really were convinced that by reading the New York Times, they knew what was going on, and that if General Jack Keane said this, it must be true, and how could McGovern be disputing this? And it was very sad because I lost I lost some friends. I mean, I was trying to start a listserv, you know, hey, let's talk about this. Not interested. Sometimes you don't want to know these things. Now, incidentally, I'm going up for my 55th in June, and Jack Keane will be there celebrating his 50th, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to make that sacrifice again, not have a beer during lunch so that I can challenge him if he spreads more lies. Keane is not an incidental figure here. He was largely responsible for the surge, you know, the celebrated surge in 2007, the real purpose of which was to let Bush and Cheney ride off into the western sunset without having lost the war in Iraq, right? What did it cost? No, just 1,000 US troops, countless thousands of Baghdad residents, making Baghdad a kind of a city that used to have Sunni and Shia living in harmony together. Ethnic cleansing is the word I was searching for. That's what happened in Baghdad. And, you know, what happened since? Well, you see, Iraq is a shambles now. It was entirely predictable. Even Bobby Gates, who became Secretary of State because he was willing to do this for Bush, he and Jack Keane and the rest of them, even he, you know, kind of says that, you know, this was, had a, the Chinese say, had a no good end. So Keane was a consequential voice in all this and needs to be held accountable, because most people, because they read the New York Times, the surge was a terrific success, where in reality it was not only a total failure, but it was mounted for very, 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 very political kind of the most crass reasons, just to let Bush and Cheney off without having lost the war. And when Bobby Gates decided that he would take the invitation to become Secretary of Defense, that was only after Donald Rumsfeld, of all people, had gone wobbly on the war. He wrote a memo to George Bush saying, look, you know, I think my generals are right. We need to change our policy on Iraq. His generals, in September of 2006, testified before Congress. What did they say? We really appreciate your support in this war, but do us a favor, we don't need any more troops. Please, I know you mean well, but please don't send us any more troops. I'm talking Abi Zaid, head of CENTCOM. I'm talking Casey, head of the troops in Iraq, pleading with Congress, no more troops. Why? Because if you send more troops, the Iraqis will never get it through their heads that they have to cooperate Sunni and Shia. They'll always play each other, or you against us, and they'll never get the message. So the ostensible reason for sending more troops would be to get them to cooperate. It would just have the opposite effect. That's what General Casey, that's what General Abizade said. Now what happened? Well, Bush decided when he went to Jack Keane and those people, said, hey, I can't lose a war on my watch. And so he said, well, Rumsfeld, we got to can him. We got to can those generals. He gets Bobby Gates. I say Bobby Gates because he used to work for me, right? Okay. So he gets Bobby to come to Crawford, Texas, and he says, now, Bob, we got this thing orchestrated. We're going to have a surge. We know that you're not expert in military stuff, but Jack Keane and this Petraeus has got a lot of medals and merit badges here. He's going to help you.
Consequence is worse than a third world